Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Janet Jackson has started a firestorm after saying that Kamala's not black and she'd heard that her father is a white man. Now, there's been a lot of people who are very touchy about that particular subject, especially some of the Democrat boosters on The View, of all places. Just for the record, though, on Kamala Harris's birth certificate, her father's race is listed as Jamaican, which is a nationality, not a race. I haven't been able to find anywhere where Donald Harris has ever been on record declaring himself as a black man. Kamala says it, but it's not about what she says, it's about what her father says. And nobody has anything on that. Now, when Janet made this remark, it was during an interview with The Guardian, and during that interview there was the predictable pushback, "How can you say that?" She was saying what she heard. That's what she was saying. She was saying, "I heard that she's not really black, that her father is a white man. That's what I heard." And because of the fact that Donald Harris has chosen to leave this dearth of information, that creates a huge vacuum that everybody who wants to speculate is filling. Now, when Janet Jackson got pushed back from The Guardian on this, instead of backing down, she doubled down. She said, "I hear that he's a white man." And that's something that apparently the white media couldn't accept because Janet Jackson, not only is she a high-profile celebrity, but she's a black woman. And of course, the entire idea is that black women in particular are not supposed to have any misgivings about Kamala Harris whatsoever because it's forbidden. You just can't do that. Now, after this interview made waves, you had this white Egyptian who worked for Janet Jackson, and this guy, he took it upon himself that he was gonna correct the record on his own. So he decided to put out a false statement, a total lie, saying that Janet Jackson apologized. Here's a statement from Janet Jackson that I'm giving to you. In this statement, she says that she apologizes, that she was given misinformation, she wants unity, etc. That's what he put out there without her permission. Now, when Janet Jackson found out about this, she had this clown fired, as she should have. But it just goes to show, you might want to think to yourself, how many times have we seen somebody who the white media has been taking aim at, and then out of nowhere we get some sort of weird statement saying, "Oh, I'm doing an apology for this, that, and the third," and the person turns up later going, "I don't have any memory of it." That's what happened here. Except in this case, it was actually high profile, so we know about it. Now, this individual, this El Masri character, he, after he got fired, put out a statement in which he admitted that he had lied, but he claims that he was only doing it for Janet's own good. He was just trying to help her and saying that he didn't deserve to be fired. And then after all that, he wrote, "All my support to Vice President Harris." That's what this guy does. Sounds like the Democrats had themselves an inside person in Janet Jackson's camp. Sounds like this pathetic PR shill is now trying to audition for a job with a possible Harris administration. Well, he'll have to get in line along with Roly-Poly Martin, Angela Rye, and a bunch of other clowns. But understand that the lie that this guy put out there, intentionally falsely claiming that Janet Jackson had apologized when she never did, this was picked up by all the white media outlets. They were running with this and saying, "So, see, she got her mind right. She went ahead and took all that back." They disseminated this lie to the world. So this lie was spread far and wide, and that was the entire point. Even though Janet Jackson never apologized for anything because she hadn't done anything wrong, this creep lied and claimed that she had anyway. This is how white power operates. If they can't trip you up, if they can't intimidate or coerce you into backing down, then they'll just have some operative put out some straight lie about you. But the fact that Janet Jackson was the one, a high-profile black woman who was the one who said this, oh, that's just made heads explode. See, while the white media gives wall-to-wall coverage to super thoughts like Meg Thee Stallion and dried-out has-beens like Vivica Fox, they try to ignore Janet Jackson because they're afraid of black women. A black woman who isn't acting like a skank, who makes it clear that she's going to be taken seriously, they hate that. This is also part of a larger narrative of fear that the Democrats have going right now. People have heard about how black men aren't voting for Kamala Harris. But when you look at black women, you see that Kamala's got a huge problem with them too. Black women are demanding tangibles, and all she's offering are vibes. Well, that ain't gonna wash. Black women have seen the disrespect that Kamala Harris has shown over the decades, and thanks to the black media, we've kept her targeting of black mothers under the guise of fighting truancy fresh in people's minds. We're not letting anything fall down the memory hole. Kamala's sorority ties aren't helping her with black women either. Black women don't respect these bougie, boule front groups. All that girl power and black girl magic talk is recognized for the empty rhetoric that it is. This is what's going on now. Black men were leading the charge, and more black women are getting on board. All you got to do is look at the comment sections, and increasingly, the videos that are being posted online, you're seeing more and more black women who are saying, wait a minute here, it ain't just the black men, we got our issues too, and they spell it out. The white media's avalanche of propaganda isn't drowning out black women's voices, which is what they're hoping for. We'll try to drown their voices out. And in the case of somebody like Janet Jackson, if you can't drown their voice out, then just lie about it. Say, oh, they didn't say that at all. This is how the white media operates. Here's another example for you. Everyone knows the NAACP is in the tank for white power. They've been a bootlicking jamboree for so long now it's not even worth a discussion. Whenever we talk about bootlicks or controlled opposition and sellouts, we're talking about the NAACP. You see, this month they did a poll to gauge Kamala's support among black voters in general. And being the NAACP, you can bet they made sure that the questions and the people selected as the sample for the poll were as favorable to Kamala as possible. That's their job. So what were the results of the NAACP poll? Bad news for Kamala. That's what. As an alleged black woman, we're told that black women can't wait to vote for Kamala, that black women are the main ones supporting her. Well, don't look now, but the NAACP's own poll shows that only 79% of black women over the age of 50 plan to vote for Kamala Harris. That's important because Kamala herself is 59 years old now. Black women over the age of 50, that is her demographic. And if 1 out of 5 are planning to not vote for her, that's a problem, especially in a presidential race this tight, where she's behind in the polls. But when it comes to younger black voters, 18 to 49, that's where Kamala Harris's support in the black community really plummets. Among the 18 to 49 crowd, only 56% said to the NAACP that they would be backing her candidacy. That's the impact that the black media's had, because that's who we talk to. 18 to 49, that's our demographic. That is everybody from Gen X all the way to Gen Z. So for the younger folks, you can see what the future of the Democratic Party is. And it's going to be pretty dang empty. That's what it means. So Kamala Harris's black support is in the tank. They can go ahead and try to put a pretty face on it, but when the NAACP says, man, about 1 in 5 black women are not backing her, and nearly half of young black voters say that they're not going to back her, that's when you know you got a problem. How the world do you lose half of young black voters? By doing nothing for them for over 3 generations. That's how. And you can trot out all of the phony baloney black activists you want, all of these sock puppets who the white media trots out every few months. You can go ahead and have all of the bootlicks and shills get out there and say, you've got to do what we say. We're not listening to them. And the more that they scream and yell and try to coerce us, the more we ignore them. Because that's what you do with irrelevant people. You don't argue with them. You don't go back and forth with them. You just pay them no never mind. See, this is the whole part of Kamala Harris's stagnating poll numbers that they're not talking about. Sure, it's got a lot of black men out there who are looking and going, you know what, this woman definitely ain't for us. But there's a lot of black women who have been looking and going, you know what, she ain't for us either. This is the solidification of the black voting bloc. This is black folks being a cohesive voting bloc, and the white media does not want that. That threatens white power. Black people who are on code and united threatens white power. As Newsweek reported, Harris's support among black voters, while strong, lags behind previous Democratic candidates. A Suffolk University poll from earlier in September showed that she held a 64-point lead over former President Donald Trump. This figure is lower than Joe Biden's 2020 lead, which stood at 78 points, and significantly behind Hillary Clinton's 88-point lead in 2016. See, as the Cajun Skeletor, James Carville, had said, Democrats' numbers with black people have been trending downward for over a decade, since 2013. Every election cycle, the numbers get lower and lower and lower. So when it comes to black voters, Kamala Harris's support is lower than it was for Hillary Clinton or even for Biden in a race where black voters are going to be key. That's no small thing. And Newsweek also tried to sprinkle sugar on crap by talking to black women like Adrienne Shropshire. She's the front woman for Black PAC. Go back in the archives on this YouTube channel. I exposed her and that white dark money donors who invented Black PAC and who are funding it. She's their sock puppet front woman. Her group is nothing more than a clumsy front for a white DNC cheerleading squad. Shropshire says that Democrats need to knock on more doors and increase their mail and digital efforts. So at a time when black voter discontent is higher than it's been in generations, and black people are talking about actual issues, What's Adrian Shropshire and Black Pact's solution? More junk mail and more website banners to annoy you on the internet. Not a word about policy, which is what black voters have pointed to as being the entire problem. See, this is what so-called Black Pact's about. This is what they're saying should be done. Ignore black voters' concerns and instead just carpet bomb them with more propaganda. And speaking of propaganda, the incompetent operative class for the Democrats is hard at work telling us that black women's most important issue is abortion. So you got this woman, Collie Nicole Gross, writing articles in which she says abortion bans are a threat to black women, and she boasts that black women account for 40% of abortions in the U.S., as if that's some sort of bragging point. I looked to see if this alleged academic has ever demanded policymakers address the black maternal mortality rate, and I found nothing. Yeah, they want to sit here talking about back alley abortions cost women their lives, not as much as the black maternal mortality rate does. It's these doctors who are in these hospitals who are killing black mothers, far higher than the number of black women who may have lost their lives to the proverbial back alley abortion, but nobody talks about that. Oh yeah, we want to save black women and girls. It's all about saving black women's lives. Yeah, but not when it comes to actually having babies. If a black woman's saying, I'm trying to create more black people, let the woman die. I didn't even bother to look to see if this Callie Nicole Gross woman has demanded policies to address the black infant mortality rate. How about more black babies, please? Don't see anything from her on that. Anyone who's writing love letters to abortion doesn't give a rip about black babies. And because of the fact that you need black women to have black babies, if you're not talking about the black maternal mortality rate, then you don't care about black women at all. This is what intersectional feminism is, family. A Trojan horse for a straight anti-black policy that's meant to kill black women. That's their idea of girl power, putting as many black girls and women in the grave as they can. This is who Time magazine trots out as speaking for black women. They say nothing about anything that will undermine white power. Instead, they push strategies that white Democrats want. So for all the black mothers out there, take heart. Kamala Harris will make it easier for you to abort your babies. And even if you don't want to do that, that's okay. She'll make it easier for your daughters to abort theirs. And just in case you're one of those pesky black women who actually thinks black babies are a good thing and that black Americans should have a future, well, Kamala's got a solution for that too. Since the doctors are killing black mothers, which is what maternal mortality actually is, it's state-sanctioned murders of black mothers, neither Kamala nor any of her black feminist cheerleaders will say a word about that, and they won't do a thing about it either. Now go to the polls and vote for Kamala. Vibes! It's beyond absurd. They make an in-your-face show of their utter contempt for black women, and then they can't understand why black women are souring on voting for Kamala in specific and Democrats in general. This is the untold story of Kamala Harris's poll numbers having stagnated. They're doing everything they can to avoid having to admit that the first Asian woman who's on the ballot for the presidency, who made a career out of prosecuting black women, she doesn't have black women's support. No matter what the white media may try to tell you, Kamala Harris's black voter support is weak, and they know it. Just take a look at what Politico wrote. They were sitting here quoting Jamie Harrison as having said, if we can get the turnout in rural Georgia, in rural North Carolina, rural Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, where we've got sizable pockets of black and brown voters, it puts less pressure on our urban areas, and it really allows us to run up those scores. That's what Jamie Harrison said. And by the way, if the name Jamie Harrison sounds familiar, it should. This is the clown who nigga Jim Clyburn endorsed 4 years ago, and it was his defeat in that Senate campaign when he crashed and burned in humiliating fashion. That's what caused Jim Clyburn to be ready to jump out a window. He was ready to blame everybody, especially us, when he was talking about stop sloganizing kills, y'all gonna cost us elections. It was specifically the loss of his boy, Jamie Harrison, that had him foaming at the mouth. He said that the people talking about defunding the police, trying to hold the thugs with badges accountable for their crimes, they're the reason that his boy lost. Well, you know what? For once in his pathetic, empty life, James Clyburn's right. If Jamie Harrison had gotten on board with the black agenda, if he had gotten with the program, then he would have won, just like Raphael Warnock did. But Jamie Harrison, he preferred to be Clyburn's boy. And being the little slave that he is, Clyburn can't afford for his white DNC paymasters to think that he can't conjure magic for them at the polls. He's got to be able to show that he can corral all the little niggers out there. After all, the white media does call him the most influential black politician in America. Well, that's what I hear too, but mostly from the white media. So when you see Jamie Harrison saying something, just remember, he's one of James Clyburn's operatives. And look at the areas that he mentioned. Georgia, that means Atlanta. Georgia is a red state. It's the home of Newt Gingrich and Marjorie Taylor Greene, for God's sake. So understand that. Georgia is a Republican state. The only bastion of Democrat power there is Atlanta, period. Harrison also was talking about rural Pennsylvania. Whenever the Democrats say Pennsylvania, that means Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania is basically a red state with a huge blue island in it. Hell, even the Cajun Skeletor James Carville admitted that when he famously said Pennsylvania is Philadelphia in the east, Pittsburgh in the west, and Alabama in between. So anytime any politician is talking about Democrats winning Pennsylvania, they're talking about Philadelphia, a black city. And the same for Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a purple state that leans slightly to the right, but the divide is just slim enough between Democrats and Republicans where the black vote is the swing vote. When black voters are mobilized in Wisconsin, Democrats win. And when black voters aren't, Democrats lose. So when they say Wisconsin, that basically means Milwaukee. And Harrison also was talking about North Carolina. Trump's still ahead of Harris there, but pollsters are claiming that it's within the margin of error now, so that's why Harrison's so jolly in the behind about it. Black voters are who carries these areas for the Democrats. So the question is, why abandon a tried and true strategy for something totally different, untried, ain't won a single election for you, and try to go to these rural areas? Why do that? These rural areas are much more likely to be Republican. Why are they sitting there talking about black and brown voters in areas that are much more known to be Republican friendly? That doesn't make sense. It takes far more money and people to try to canvass, reach, and mobilize people out in the sticks than it does in the inner city. You get the most bang for your buck in the urban areas because the voters are more concentrated there. Black people have largely left rural areas, so why waste time going out there in the boonies? Well, Harrison told you why. Because there's brown voters out there. This isn't about black voters at all. This is about continuing the Democrats' ongoing project of creating a new non-black voter base, one that will be comprised of people who won't put pressure on white supremacy. So what they're hoping is that there's going to be some brown voters out there who are going to lean toward Kamala Harris, but it also smells like they're continuing the ongoing project of looking for those Biden Republicans, who I guess these days they're hoping are going to be Kamala Republicans. That seems to be what's at work here. That's what's going on here. You have a black man who's the head of the DNC committee now, and he's trying to push the Democrat strategy of putting together a new base, one that isn't vulnerable to black people's demands, because we're putting too much pressure on a system that has benefited everyone, like Jamie Harrison, and harmed everyone like you and me. No matter what kind of a pretty face the white media tries to put on things, Kamala Harris just isn't running the boards with black voters. When you look past the paper-thin veneer of hype and exaggerations the white media throws up, you very quickly find that black voters are either deciding to stay home on Election Day, or you even have a few who are deciding that with a candidate like Harris on the ballot, they might as well just vote for the orange man. Now, let's be honest, the claim that black voters are all running to the GOP, that's a lie. But it is true that Kamala Harris continues a practice of Democrats trying to bluff their way past black voters, and with empty rhetoric, scare talk, and phony praise is all that she's offering, well, it's not surprising that there's a few black voters who are going, well, hell, might as well go ahead and give the cheap con man from that game show a listen. 4 years ago, the white media saw that black voters rejected Kamala Harris outright during her own damn-to-fail presidential bid, and that black voters were not at all enthused about voting for Jim Crow Joe Biden. So the talking point that went out from DNC headquarters 4 years ago was, say that anyone talking about reparations is a Russian bot. That's what Joy Reid did on her show. This time around, they're claiming that there's some group of conservatives who are trying to undermine Kamala's black support by saying she wants to ban menthol cigarettes. I'm not making that up. That's what the white media is claiming. Now, this is a stupid ploy on the white leftist media part because black voters aren't talking about cigarettes. Clearly, this is meant to be the white leftist media saying that the white right is clueless about black voters, so they think some stereotype about black smokers and menthol cigarettes is going to turn black voters against them. Never mind that these white leftists are as clueless about black voters as the white conservatives, especially their stalking horse Kamala Harris. Get your booty to the polls, anyone? Kamala Harris dancing to Cardi B? Meg the Stallion as her virtual running mate, and don't forget washing collard greens in the bathtub. Kamala Harris isn't talking about anything that's important to black voters at all. In fact, she's doing everything she can to distract from her total lack of policies for us. And the second problem with NBC's piece is that Kamala Harris is losing black support because she refuses to talk about things in our interest. This NBC piece is a perfect example of that. Black voters are getting on code. All of their carpet bombing us with propaganda isn't bearing fruit like it used to. The old bag of tricks just ain't working, and they don't know how to cope. I thought it was very important to go ahead and do a morning briefing about exactly where black women voters stand with Kamala Harris, because we don't want anyone saying that, well, it's just the black men out there who are objecting to it. No, there has been a long-standing body of black women who have been speaking up, and they deserve to be heard, because people like Kamala make it their habit to ignore them. So I gotta tip my hat to the sisters out there for standing on business. Make sure to leave your comments. Make sure to also put out videos of your own. The very best thing that you can do is to make sure you speak in your own voice for yourselves. That's how you put the pressure on the Kamala Harrises of this world, and it's also how you shut down all of these bought and paid for sister girls out here who are calling themselves being cheerleaders for her. If you are not standing for black people's interests, starting with our monetary interests, and also being closely followed by our right to life, which is why I keep pointing to the maternal mortality rate and the infant mortality rate so much, then you are not actually concerned about black voters at all. And if you're not concerned about black voters, and certainly not concerned about black women voters, then why the hell should they be concerned about you? Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Suleiman Alaji, James Hampton, Jacques Hargett, Deep I 904, and Gregory Franklin. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.